period of activism started in the year 1970 and ended up in the year 1972. According to Pasiano Pineda, youth activism in 1970 to 1972 was due to domestic and worldwide causes. Moreover, activism is concerned with the history of our Filipino youth because of the ills of society, which then moved the youth to seek reforms. Here are the key points during the period of activism. Activism is connected with the history of our Filipino youth. Some believed that the democratic government is still stable and that it is only the people running the government who are at fault. Some also believed that socialism or communism should replace democracy, and some armed groups were also formed to bring down the democratic form of government. Many young people became activists to ask for changes in the government. In the expression of this desire for change, keen were the writings of some youth who were fired with nationalism in order to emphasize the importance of their petitions. Many young activists were imprisoned in military camps together with the rebel writers. As early as the period of history, we can say that many of those writers who were imprisoned were true nationalists and heroes of their time. Many books aptly record and embody these times, but many of these are not known to many, and many of these writers still have to be interviewed. We just leave the scholars and researchers to giving of credit where credit is due. The following slides present the literary revolution. The youth became completely rebellious during this period. This was proven not only in the bloody demonstrations in the sidewalk expressions, but also in literature. Campus newspapers showed rebellious emotions. The once aristocratic writers developed awareness for society. They held pens and wrote on placards in red paint in the equivalent of the word makibaka. They attacked the ills of society and politics. Any establishment became the symbol of the ills that had to be changed. The frustrations of the youth could be felt in churches and school. Even the priests, teachers, and parents, as authorities who should be respected, became targets of the radical youth and were thought of as hindrances to the changes they sought. The literature of the activists reached a point where they started boldly what should be done to effect these changes. Some of those who rallied to this revolutionary form of literature were Rolando Tinio, Rogelio Mangajas, Efren Abueg, Rio Alma, and Clemente Bautista. Here are some of the works of the aforementioned writers. Rolando Tinio wrote his poetic collection, Rage and Ritual, Sit-Sit sa Kuliglig. Rogelio Mangajas, a Palangka first prize winner of his collection of poems, Mga Duguang Placard. Efren Abueg, his works appeared on magazines such as Liwayway, Bulaklak, Tagumpay, and Home Life. Rio Alma, some of his poetry collections are Palipad Hangin, Sentimental. He's also the second successful modernist movement in Filipino poetry. Writing during the period of activism. The reverence for the poor reached its peak during this period of the mass revolution. It was also during this period that Bomba films discredited our way as Filipinos started to come out. Furthermore, the theme in most writings during this period was press freedom, since this was also the time when former President Marcos initiated the martial law. Mr. Federico Lixi Espino was awarded as the most brilliant poet in Tagalog in the year 1970. Palangka awardees for literature in English. But before that, here's a short trivia about the Palangka Award. This award was named after Carlos Palanca, who established the Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature during the year 1950. He had been given cash prizes for short story, poetry, and one-act playwriting as an incentive to Filipino writers. The Palanca awardees for literature in English. For English, short story. English one-act play. English poetry. Let's proceed to the period of New Society, year 1972 to year 1980. The period of the New Society started on September 21, 1972. The Carlos Palanca Awards continued to give annual awards. Almost all themes in most writings dealt with the development or progress of the country, such as the Green Revolution, family planning, proper nutrition, environment, drug addiction, and pollution. The New Society tried to stop pornography or those writings giving bad influences on the morals of the people. All school newspapers were temporarily stopped, and so were the school organizations. Government's role during this period. The military government established a new office called the Ministry of Public Affairs that supervised the newspapers, books, and other publications. The government took part in reviving old plays like the Sinaculo, the Zarzuela, and the Imbayoka of the Muslims, the Cultural Center of the Philippines, the Folk Arts Theater, and even the Old Metropolitan Theater were rebuilt in order to have a place for these plays. Singing both Filipino and English songs received fresh incentives. Those sent abroad promoted many Filipino songs. The weekly publications like Kislap and Liwayway helped a lot in the development of literature. These became outlets for writers to publish many of their works. Filipino poetry during the period of the New Society. Themes of the most poems dealt with patience, regard for native culture, customs, and the beauties of nature and surroundings. Those who wrote poetry during this period were Ponciano Pineda, Anicito Silvestre, Jose Garcia Revelo, Bienvenido Ramos, Vicente de Masalang, Sir Lopez Francisco, and Pelagio Sulit Cruz. Slogans of the New Society. Sa ikauunlad ng bayan, disiplina ang kailangan. Tayo'y kumain ng gulay upang humaba ang buhay. Magplano ng pamilya nang ang buhay ay lumigaya. Ang pagsunod sa magulang, tanda ng anak na magalang. Tayo'y magtanim upang mabuhay. Tayo'y magbigayan at huwag magsiksikan. Many more composers added their beat during this period. Among them were Freddie Aguilar, Jose Marichan, and the group of Tito, Vic, and Joey. Anak of Freddie Aguilar became an instant success because of the spirit and emotions revealed in the song. There were even translations in Japanese and in other languages. The play under the New Society. The government led in reviving old plays and dramas, like the Tagalog Zarzuela, Sinaculo, and the Imbayoka of the Muslims, which were presented in the rebuilt Metropolitan Theater, the Folk Arts Theater, and the Cultural Center of the Philippines. Many schools and organizations also presented varied plays. In fact, the Mindanao State University presented a play, Sining Imbayoka, at the Cultural Center of the Philippines. In 1977, The Tales of Manuvo, a new style of rock of ballet opera, was also added to these presentations. This was performed by Celeste Legaspe, Lea Navarro, Haji Alejandro, Boy Camara, Anthony Castelio, Ray Dizon, and choreographed by Alec Reyes. Even the president's daughter at the time participated as a performing artist in the principal role of Santa Juana of Corral in the Diary of Anne Frank. The following organizations contributed a lot to the development of plays during this period. PETA of Cecil Guidote and Lino Broca, Repertory Philippines of Rebecca Godinez and Zineda Amador, UP Repertory of Ben Cervantes, Teatro Filipino by Rolando Tinio. Let's proceed to radio and television. Radio continued to be patronized during this period. The play series like Simatar, Dalia, Ito Ang Palad Ko, and Mr. Lonely were the forms of recreation of those without television. Even the new songs were first heard over the airwaves. However, many performing artists in radio moved over to television because of higher pay. Among these were Augusto Victa, Jean Palomo, Meli Tagasa, Lina Pusing, and Esther Chavez. Popular television plays were Gulong ng Palad, Flor de Luna, and Annalisa. Superman and Tarzan were also popular with the youth. Now let's have the Filipino films. A yearly pista ng mga pelikulang Pilipino or yearly Filipino Film Festival was held during this time. During the festival, which lasted usually for a month, only Filipino films were shown in all theaters in Metro Manila. Prizes and trophies were awarded at the end of the festival in recognition of excellence in filmmaking and in role performances. New kinds of films without sex or romance started to be made, but which were nevertheless well received by the public. Among these were Maynila sa mga kuko ng liwanag, written by Edgardo Reyes and filmed under the direction of Lino Broca. Bembel Rocco was the lead role. Minsay Isang Gamo-Gamo by Nora Honor, and she was also the principal performer here. Ganito Kami Noon, Paano Kaya Ngayon, led by Christopher De Leon and Gloria Diaz. Insiang by Hilda Coronel. Aguila, led by Fernando Poe Jr., Jay Ilagan, and Christopher De Leon. Sex films could not be shelved. Foreign as well as local films dealing with both themes were the vehicles of producers to earn more money. Comics, magazines, and other publications. During this period of the new society, newspapers donned new forms. News on economic progress, discipline, culture, tourism, and the like were favored more than the sensationalized reporting of killings, rape, and robberies. The leading papers during this period were Bulletin Today, Times Journal, People's Journal, Balita, Filipino Express, Philippine Daily Express, Evening Post, and Evening Express. Liwayway had been an old-time favorite of the Filipinos since 1920. Other magazines were Kislap, Bulaklak, Extra Hot, Jingle Sensation. Like mushrooms, comics also proliferated everywhere and were enjoyed by the masses. Among these were Filipino, Extra, Love Life, Hiwaga, Classic, and Especial. Here are the Palangka awardees during the period of the New Society. For short story category, for play category, for poetry category, an overview of the literature during the New Society. Bilingual education, which was initiated by the Board of National Education as early as the year 1958 and continued up to the period of martial rule in September 21, 1972, resulted in the deterioration of English in the different levels of education. The focus of education and culture was on problems of national identity, reorientation, renewed vigor, and a firm resolve to carry out plans and programs. The forms of literature that led during this period were the essays, debates, and poetry. The short stories, like the novels and plays, were no different in style from those written before the onset of activism. Some of the books that came out during this period were in the year 1976, I Married a Newspaperman. It was an essay by Maria Luna Lopez, who is a wife of a newspaperman named Salvador B. Lopez. In the year 1980, The Modern Filipino Short Story by Patricia Melendres Cruz. In the year 1976, Cross Currents in Afro-Asian Literature by Rustica Di Carpio. Brief Time to Love by Ophelia F. Limcaco. Medium Rare and Tell the People, a feature articles and TV program by Julie Yap Daz. Thank you for listening. Have a good day, everyone.